Downside of living on distant island. Stuff take forever when order online. It come by small boat, but every time it come, we shoot. After a while, boat stop coming.
Yeah, that sounds like a you problem. Unless you're new to this channel, then you should be well aware by now that I love platformers, particularly 3D platformers. They played a key role in my childhood gaming experiences, and many of them remain as some of my favorite games, including my absolute favorite. It makes it unfortunate that the genre kinda died in the last few console generations, but with the overabundance of them, I guess it was to be expected. However, this year has provided a surprising amount of titles serving as a return to the genre, but as we reach the end of 2017, it's not as much of a blessing as we thought it'd be. I mean, the Insane trilogy was fantastic, and while Mario Odyssey hasn't been released yet at the time of me writing this, early reviews have been super promising, but Yooka-Laylee I found pretty lackluster, Sonic Forces has admittedly been getting me a bit concerned the more they show off gameplay, and as I discussed in my last review, Skylar and Plux was... yeah, no. However, not all hope shall remain in the hands of PS1 remasters and first-party Nintendo games, because this year also marked the long-awaited release of the indie 3D platformer A Hat in Time, a game 5 years in the making by Gears for Breakfast that was released on Steam at the start of October, with a PS4 and Xbox One release coming later this season. I had heard word of this game when it first got announced, but I wasn't fully in the loop about its existence until 2015, and since then, I've kept pretty up to date with its development, up until the week before the game's release when the devs were offering out review codes. Much to my surprise, I end up getting a review code. Now, before we begin, a few words of note. First off, while I did get a free review copy, thank you a lot by the way, I greatly appreciate it, Gears for Breakfast have played no influence in the opinions shared in this review. Every word I say about the game is mine and mine alone. Second, I will be dabbling a bit into spoilers, so if you want to go into the game as blind as you can, best not to keep going with this video. And finally, I apologize ahead of time for the frame rate in my footage. It so happens that my computer is getting a bit dated and thus had some lag issues when playing through the game. Rest assured, frame rate is not an issue in the game outside of that. Now that we've got that all covered, let's get the show on the road, shall we? Following suit with the 3D platformers of the early 90s, A Hat in Time keeps its story pretty simple. It focuses on this hat kid named... well, Hat Kid, as she's on a space voyage back home, using these magic hourglasses called timepieces as fuel. However, as she passes over an unknown planet, a member of the planet's mafia comes knocking at her door.
All boats need to pay toll in Mafia Town, even in space.
I guess Tim Curry was wrong. Even space has been corrupted by capitalism.
Space!
The Mafia guy ends up breaking and entering, leading to him, Hat Kid, and many of the timepieces getting sucked out of the spaceship and onto the planet, with Hat Kid conveniently landing right in the Mafia's base of operations, Delfino Plaza, Mafia Town. Also, he is definitely dead. Not too long after she lands, and by not too long I mean literal seconds, Hat Kid meets this mustached Little Red Riding Hood girl known as... Mustache Girl. Man, parents in this world must really hate their kids. And after saving her from being blown up by a small gang of Mafia members, Hat Kid ends up joining Mustache Girl on her plan to take down the Mafia. Though I'm not sure which is worse, Mustache Girl's horribly sadistic scheme, or the fact that Hat Kid seems totally fine with this cruelty. The two end up infiltrating the Mafia's base and fighting the Mafia's leader, but after his defeat, Mustache Girl discovers what the timepieces are capable of and now wants to use them to rid the planet of its bad guys, something that Hat Kid doesn't want to do because she just wants to get home. So Mustache Girl takes off to find the timepieces before Hat Kid can. But not before she steals half her money. Though after this, instead of focusing specifically on a conflict between Hat Kid and Mustache Girl, the game takes a sort of Alice in Wonderland approach with its story, with Hat Kid exploring the world for the remaining timepieces and getting roped into conflicts with the other colorful characters of the planet. Mustache Girl doesn't even show up again until you have around 2/3 of the timepieces, which is when she infiltrates your spaceship and steals your timepieces, in order to transform the planet into one under her judgmental control. Like I said earlier, A Hat in Time keeps its story pretty simple, with no major twists or turns in its narrative. But with a game like this, I think it actually benefits from this decision, especially since it now has more time to devote to its characters. A Hat in Time's cast isn't the most three-dimensional sets out there, but each character is filled to the brim with personality and helps give the game its charm. I've already mentioned Mustache Girl with her mixture of sadism and belief that she's on a moral high ground, but there's also characters like the foul-mouthed conductor, the flamboyant DJ Grooves, the eccentric but creepy Snatcher, alongside several other charming side characters. On the topic of the characters, let me just quickly take this moment to gush about how superb the writing is. The game goes for a witty style of humor and nails it with almost every single joke, from clever character dialogue to what's said when examining certain objects. That said, there is one issue I have with the writing, and that's with when the game gives you a choice with how to respond. In most situations, there's only one true answer, with the other answer only leading to a gag or death. But I'm particularly referring to the one in the ending, where after you've restored the planet and about to take off for home, you're given the choice to whether or not you send a timepiece down to Mustache Girl to help her defeat the Mafia. The game notes that you may not have enough fuel to get home if you do give up a timepiece, so I initially thought that if you gave her the timepiece without all 40 of them, you wouldn't get the true ending or something like that. But nope, the decision leads to the exact same ending, regardless of which choice you pick and regardless of how many timepieces you have. Despite this, I do think the story, characters, and writing are handled quite well overall, keeping it simple, but making it work with its personality and charm. I'd actually argue that the writing alone is a selling point for this game. Also, Mustache Girl's gruesome plan involving stuffing the Mafia's remains into jars? Yeah, she actually did that to the Mafia leader. Mustache Girl should be thankful that Hat in Time didn't come out in 2012, otherwise she'd be on every single hated characters list now. Alright, let's just get straight to the point. This is a pretty game. I mean, it admittedly can be a bit awkward seeing Hat Kid's model in a dark area but with her eyes still as bright as usual, but the models overall look good, and, more notably, the visuals of the levels are fantastic. Each area has plenty of life to it, even the darker and drearier areas, and because each world is so different from one another, they each provide a new visual flair for you to take in. From the beautiful Delfino-esque Mafia town, to the enchanting Subcon Forest, to the beautifully mesmerizing Time Rift secret levels, not one part of this game is visually dull. The only notable issue I have in regards to graphics and character models is that the game does have a few notable situations of clipping. For example, right here. You okay there, Mr. Penguin? Now let's go over the audio, starting with... Actually, you know what? Give me a moment. Woo! That soundtrack! So yeah, as you can tell, I really like A Hat in Time's soundtrack. It was composed by Pascal Stifel, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, with a few guest composers like Banjo-Kazooie's very own Grant Kirkhope. And to put it simply, they did a wonderful job with the music. Each piece plays its part perfectly, matching each setting and atmosphere it's been put in. But even outside of the game, they're great to listen to. Personal favorites would have to be the game's boss themes. Like, here, take a quick listen. I could listen to these tunes all day. As for the voice acting, it's pretty solid as well. I mean, yeah, it can come off as cheesy and over the top at times, but for a game as cartoony as this, it perfectly fits. Plus, at least it's still good acting and not...
Ah, dang you! Gosh dang you all, you smell!
Yeah, that. And now for the technical stuff. Like I said earlier, I personally had some framerate issues, especially in the later half of the game, but again, that was entirely because my computer's been getting a bit dated. But I have heard that with the proper hardware, framerate issues are near non-existent. The only other technical issue I had during my playthrough were a few instances of glitches, but I messaged the devs about this on Discord, and they had both these fixed within an hour. I could use this opportunity to make some sort of potshot at Ubisoft for not doing the same, but not worth it. As I made clear earlier, A Hat in Time is a 3D platformer, taking inspiration from the collectathons of the late 90s and early 2000s, such as Banjo-Kazooie and the 3D Mario platformers. Though I'd say as a whole, it takes more inspiration from the 3D Mario games than it does Banjo-Kazooie. And unlike Yooka-Laylee, which basically served as a spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie, A Hat in Time does still have its own identity, and not just from its visuals or writing. Hat Kid has your platform essentials in her move skills, like jumping, double jumping, wall jumping, attacking, which in this case is in the form of beating people until they explode with her umbrella, and her speedrunner technique, which takes the form of a dive in this game. Controlling Hat Kid feels perfect, with just the right amount of weight and distance in her jumps, the right amount of speed in her movement, and at least in my case, no issues with unresponsiveness or input delay. Control-wise, the game worked as flawlessly as it could get. Though alongside Hat Kid's standard abilities, and what helps make the gameplay stand out from other 3D platformers, is the hat and badge systems. Throughout the game, you collect yarn balls that you can use to sew up new hats, each one giving you a different ability, from locking on to where you need to go if you get lost, or creating explosive potions to break open certain containers, or to straight up slow down time, but we'll get back to that one in a little bit. Each hat comes to great use throughout the game, with not a single one being neglected. Alongside the multitude of hats are equipable badges that you either find hidden in levels or buy from what looks like a Shy Guy cosplayer who's having a tough time remaining connected to reality. also known as the badge seller. Badges can range from upgrades to hat powers, like turning your sprint ability into a motor scooter, brand new abilities like a hook shot, to challenge boosters, like a badge that drops your max health down to 1. And once you buy the other 2 badge pins, you can mix and match your badges to whatever fits your playthrough best. It gives the game a wonderful sense of customization and can help make following playthroughs feel fresh. Though the most notable element of A Hat in Time's gameplay that helps make it stand out is its level structure. Mafia Town plays out like a standard 3D platformer-esque world, including some of the old staples of the genre like the race someone to the collectible mission or find all of a certain item throughout the level mission, but every world following that deviates from the standard formula quite a bit. For example, the second world, Battle of the Birds, is set in a movie studio where each level after the first is a film done by either the conductor or DJ Grooves, with the levels ranging from exploring a train for clues to a murder mystery, or leading a parade across city rooftops. Your performance in the level will give said director points. Whichever director has the most points by the end of the world wins the Best Picture award and actually determines which of the 2 directors you'll face as the world's boss fight. And if I gotta be honest, Battle of the Birds is easily my favorite world in the game just because of this mechanic. Plus, the levels themselves are really fun. Though the crazy variety of level concepts don't stop there, oh no. Other examples include scaling a lava cake mountain, fighting a possessed outhouse, as one does, or, my vote for best level, Queen Vanessa's Manor, where this cute and charming 3D platformer turns into a nerve-wracking horror game. And honestly, it somehow nails the terrifying atmosphere of the horror game genre better than some full-on horror games do, and with no jump scares to speak of. And on the topic of levels, you ever hate in a game when you go into a certain level or mission and you can't complete it because the power-up you need you don't get until later in the game? Well, A Hat in Time actually warns you when you're entering a level that requires a power-up you currently don't have. It's not a major mechanic, but it's a really nice touch that came in handy. The game has a total of 40 timepieces, each one designated to either an in-level mission or these time rift secret levels hidden both in the different levels and even in your hub world. And while there's only a third of the amount of collectibles as there are in Mario 64 and Mario Sunshine, these missions have a surprising amount of depth to them, with most of them taking anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes each, as opposed to missions in Mario 64 that could take a minute or 2. But that said, the missions never feel like they overstay their welcome. And even then, some of the shorter missions, like the early Mafia Town missions, might actually take longer than they should simply because there's honestly a lot of benefits to be made in exploring. Badges are generally not cheap, so you'll want to keep an eye out for the game's currency item, or pawns rather, as well as searching for yarn balls for hats and other collectibles like rift tokens, which I'll get into in a moment, and relics, which, when put into their full set, unlock time rifts. As I said a moment ago, time rifts are the other way to get timepieces, and to put it simply, time rift levels are either multi-layered mini levels where you need to find items to unlock the next floor, or straight up Mario Sunshine style secret levels, right down to the rotating blocks with the pikes. Beating a time rift not only rewards you with a timepiece, but also lets you use a slot machine to unlock new looks for the hats, new color palettes for Hat Kid, or in-game music rearrangements that can be swapped out in the levels. Rift tokens can also be used to access the slot machine in the hub world, but I must warn all you completionists out there is no way to get every single item available in the slot machine in a single playthrough. There's simply not enough time rifts or rift tokens to get everything. Bit of a disappointment, but it's a minor thing. However, what's not a minor thing is, while the time rift levels themselves are pretty fun, the same can't be said about finding them. All that you're given is a small picture showing you where it can be located, and especially in some of the later levels, there aren't many distinguishable landmarks to help you locate them. To put it simply, there's a reason that it took me almost 40 minutes to find a single time rift in Subcon Forest. Now, I already brought up the boss music earlier, but let's talk about the boss fights themselves. This is a great lineup of boss fights, each of them providing their own sense of challenge and entertainment. Easily my favorite fight in the game, however, is the battle against the Snatcher, mostly because alongside it being a really fun fight with some amazing music, he actually takes your hat away at the start of the fight, so there's an added layer of challenge with not being able to exploit any of your hats or badges. And again, it's easily the most fun boss in the game. Though on that note, there is actually one boss in the game that I found to be a bit underwhelming, and unfortunately, that would be the final boss. If you don't want the final boss spoiled, I'd recommend skipping to the time on screen. I'll give you a chance to do so. We good? Okay, so the final battle is against Mustache Girl, now having reality-defying powers from the timepieces. I'll definitely say I like the ideas this fight presents, such as having various characters from the game assisting you with attacks and health in the second phase and third phase respectively, and on its own, this fight can be a bit challenging, if it weren't for two factors. One of the badges you get earlier in the game gives you a laser blast attack that can be used by holding the attack button. With this, hitting Mustache Girl becomes too easy as you can do it from the other side of the arena while she's prepping an attack. Second, and more notably, the previously mentioned time slowing hat. With this, fighting Mustache Girl becomes a cakewalk. You could argue the same applies with the other bosses barring the Snatcher, but the time slowing hat isn't available to unlock until Alpine Skyline, so you don't have that resource the first time you fight those bosses. And I know you don't have to use them, but it's still a viable option in this fight, and it just makes it far too easy. Again, I really like the ideas for this battle, but I do think it could have been executed better. Also, one last thing. While I wouldn't tell you to not bother 100%ing the game, because the levels and missions definitely are really fun, don't expect much of a reward for 100%ing the game, because all you get is a different pattern for your top hat. Definitely not Mario Sunshine levels of bad 100% rewards, but still, kinda disappointing. A Hat in Time is by no means a flawless game. That being said, for every negative this game has, there's at least a dozen positives to make up for it. The characters and writing alone sell this game for me, but the game's mechanics and levels are so well designed that it just makes it a standout title in the 3D platformer genre, only made stronger by its visual style and beautiful soundtrack. To put it quite simply, I absolutely loved this game. And to make matters even better, support on the game isn't even done. Not only is there the previously mentioned console version on the way, but the PC version has full mod support alongside some official mod partnerships with other indie devs, giving Hat Kid hats based off of games like Freedom Planet or Shovel Knight, and we're set to get 2 full new worlds in the game as free DLC, as well as a co-op mode. The fact that this already complete game is going to be getting so much more content in the future is just crazy to me, and I absolutely look forward to it. Even if you aren't a fan of old 3D platformers, I would still highly recommend giving this game a try. It's an absolute joy of a game from start to finish, and it's by far one of my favorite games of this year, which, considering the games we've gotten this year so far, that's saying a lot. This has been Black Mage Maverick, and until the next video, have a nice day, everybody.